Hey everybody, this is the Sliders Review, and welcome to a special edition of Asian and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. And I'm here today to talk to you about Star Trek Strange New World Season 2, Episode 3, Tomorrow, and Tomorrow. And that's a long title. So, this is a time travel episode that centers around that of Lieutenant Laan Nguyen Singh. I can't get my words out tonight. And so, when it comes to this character, she is played by that of Christina Chong, who is, well, I know she's Chinese from her dad's side. It says she's English on her mom's side. I wish to God Wikipedia will say what type of English person, because of the simple fact there are multiple races that live in England. There's white, there's black, there's Asian, and there is Indian. And so, what side is her mom? Don't know, because Wikipedia doesn't like to say, it just likes to state what country you're from and stuff. But so when it comes to her, she will technically be the last Asian person to star in a Star Trek project as part of the main cast. Because if rumors are true, Paramount wants to get away from Star Trek being on television and just focus on like the movie side of it. So as of right now, she is technically the last. But here's the thing, and I said this before, there hasn't been that many Asian people in Star Trek in terms of main cast. Not talking about recurring, I'm talking about the main cast. We all know about Sulu from the original series. Then they skip Next Generation and that of Deep Space Nine. Then there's Harry Kim from Voyager. Then there is I can't think of her name. Sato from that of Enterprise. And then they skipped Discovery, I believe. I'm not sure about Lower Decks or Prodigy. I know. What is it? What's the thing called? Starfleet Academy. I think they skipped one there. Picard had one in season 1, but that was just about it. Whoever there's Data's daughter, the android girl from Picard season 1, she's half Asian. And I'm not sure about the Romulan dude with the sword in Picard. I don't know what race he is. But for the most part, there's only been about 5, maybe 6 Asian people in Star Trek in terms of main cast, not recurring. Because then you have to think about Next Generation with Ogawa and Keiko and everything. And so about 5 or 6 people in like a span of about 60 years, that's not a lot. And, you know, it's quite shocking in terms of representation because mostly Star Trek's predominantly white. And, you know, if they were to add the second main race is like black. And there's only been like maybe 1.5 Latino people that I know of. And so, yeah, there's rarely any Asian representation. But, you know, it was cool that they added one for that of Strange New World. Now, when it comes to her character is very, very unique because of her last name. Noonan Singh, she is related to Khan. I believe she is his great-great-granddaughter or great-great-great-granddaughter. And so that really had people scratching their heads when it was announced that that was her last name when this show first started. Because they're all like, well, hold up now. When did Khan ever have any offspring? Like, it's never been mentioned before. But that's what New Trek likes to do. They always love introducing a brand new character who is related to a famous past character and then somehow cram them in the timeline and stuff. So she's kind of like Michael Burnham in that regard, or Beverly and Picard's son. I forget his name, might be Jack or something like that. But it gets really confusing when they do that because it doesn't necessarily break canon. It just makes canon a heck of a lot more confusing. In terms of that of her being related to Khan, Strange New Worlds kinda dropped the ball on it. Why the world can I get my words out tonight? It's like I'm finna say one word, but then I'm thinking of a completely different word, and then I'm about to say drop the bomb. Drop the ball and everything. They kinda dropped the ball on La'an and everything. Because she was related to Khan, people was like expecting her to do something very Khan-like. Like in season 1, it's like, okay, she's related to him. Now what? Pretty much nothing. And then, of course, there's that episode where, in season 2, I believe, where number 1 was found out to have some type of augmentation. And we find out that La'an really hates eugenic type people with augmentations and stuff like that. So it's like, finally, they're going to do something with that. Like, like, does she have any of Khan abilities, anything? Is she strong? Is she really smart? Is she durable? Is she basically immortal? Like, what the heck is going on with her? And for the most part, she just seems to be a normal human. And it's like, why have her related to Khan if she's not going to be strong or smart or evil for that part? Like, she could just been a regular character and everything would have been fine, you know what I'm saying? But they had her related to one of the most, like, infamous villains in Star Trek history. He made such an impression on the original series. They brought him back in the movies and stuff. And so, but we do find out in season 2 that she was made fun of, ridiculed, and bullied because of her last name being related to him. Because Khan was an extremely bad dude. He basically took over Earth until they was able to freeze him. And then, of course, he was unfrozen in the original series. And, Kirk was introduced to him. Captain Kirk, that is. And so, I'll get into that a little bit later because they really broke canon with this. So anyway. And so, then in season 3, when she got turned into a Vulcan, her evil side started to come out. But it's kind of like, well, just because he was evil doesn't necessarily mean she'll be evil. Like, you know what I'm saying? But instead of like exploring her Khan side, instead they, have given her some interesting character development. In season 1, she was just very grumpy and everything. Rude, mean, and it's like, okay, so they're gonna go that side of Khan, you know what I'm saying? So, but she was just always rude and always mean. She's a security officer. And she's very proficient and, like to do things by kind of like the book. And so by season 2, we find out she doesn't really like being around people that much because of how she was bullied back in the day. And so she kind of closes herself off to other people. Then we find out about her being bullied and her not liking augment people and stuff like that. But then in this episode, they decide to do something really interesting. It's a time travel episode. So she goes back to the 21st century with an alternate version of James T. Kirk, where she has romantic feelings for him. This is interesting because we've never seen her like anybody on the show like that because she's so distant and so rude and so mean and stuff. But she legit had straight feelings for him. Not straight as in she's straight. Um but she legit has like feelings for him and stuff, like real romantic feelings. And then towards the end of the episode, when she realizes all that's gonna go away and that alternate version of Kirk, is not gonna exist no more, and the Prime one doesn't know who she is and stuff, she breaks down in tears. And this was much needed for her character. She needed some type of growth and development because in the first season she was just always so grumpy. But then in the third season, they kind of, it feels almost like a retcon of her character, kind of. She's developing and growing a lot more to where she's a little bit softer. She's nicer. She dances now. And this is because of the actress knows how to dance. And she really can dance too. But then they started having her be in a relationship with Spock, of all people. Something that never happened in the original series because she never existed in the original series. And he was either engaged or married or something. Which when it comes to his Vulcan companion, if you will, they've kind of retconned that in this show. This show got to the point where they're all like, screw canon, we're just going to do whatever we want, but we're still going to say it's canon to that of the series. And then, of course, when I said when she became Vulcan, she started to become more evil and everything. Whether or not this will continue in the last season, I have no idea. And because this is not traditional Trek with over 20 something episodes, there isn't that much growth in character development beyond like what I just told you. So this episode is a time travel episode, and time travel episodes in Star Trek are always fun, except for New Trek. New Trek time travel episodes are always, for the most part, god awful and everything. Because of the simple fact, it's just they can't write a good time travel episode to save their writing career. Picard season 2 was all about time travel, and it was dreadful and everything. And it's because they miss like key components that a lot of Star Trek fans know, and we're all like, just do that, and this will make total sense. Like, why add this character if it's not that character from the past show? I'm talking about Picard season 2, and that dude from the Relativity episode of Voyager, who was in Starfleet in the 29th century, and time travel and stuff. And they got the same actor for Picard season 2, but it wasn't that character. Why do that? And they always do the whole nostalgia bait when they do time travel episodes. Hey, remember this from this past time travel Star Trek episode or a movie? Instead of doing their own thing, which is very frustrating. Now, this episode has all your typical time travel tropes and everything, but in my opinion, it's just not a fun, entertaining episode. It's not even like, a very good scientific episode for the most part. It's a little confusing, and not because they broke canon, but just about like other stuff, like things that are going on in the plot. It feels a little bit rushed at times. It feels like they couldn't explain things very well, so they just threw a bunch of stuff together. And for the most part, This entirety of this episode is just like a bonding episode between that of alternate Kirk and that of La'an. And it's such a bonding episode that like you don't get much like Trek technobabble or anything like that. Like I can't talk. Relativity. That was a great Voyager time travel episode. But why couldn't this one be like that? That would have been so nice. And for the most part, it's the whole. They have a huge twist reveal at the end of this episode where it's kind of like, wait, this is what this episode's been about the entire time? Because you've been wondering. Like, they travel back in time to prevent something from happening that stops the Federation from being a Federation. And so, you hear about terrorist attacks and bombings and the bridge and this and that and cold fusion reactors. And so it's just kind of like, okay, what is this building up to? And who is this like assassin type person? Very similar to Relativity. Then it takes a completely different turn about Khan. And it's just kind of like, wait, what? So then it's kind of like they have to rush through that in the last like 5 minutes and everything. And it's like, why are you rushing that? That should have been the main focus of the entire episode. Not this huge mystery plot that, yes, has to do with Khan, but does not feel like it has to do with Khan. And this is what frustrates me and wants to pull out what little hair I have left on my balding head because of the simple fact. New Trek just can't Trek. It just can't. It can't even really tell a lot of good original stories at times. Sometimes they can, but a lot of times they can't. So this episode just really frustrates me and everything. And it sucks that, it's a La'an centered episode because I would have preferred it to be another La'an like centered episode. And also, when she's dealing with time agents and everything, all they had to do was one throwaway line saying that, because see, here's the thing, right? The whole eugenics war thing and Khan and him being born, all of that has been changed. So they broke major canon and everything from the original series. And so because of that, the eugenics war no longer takes place in the 90s, but now the 2000s and stuff. And that's because the assassin person has been changing time so much and everything that, it has affected the canon for that like Pacific part. So one would think, okay, La'an never existed in the original series. There was no mention of Khan ever having kids. So why not just say, hey, a little time travel shenanigans is how La'an got born and everything. And somebody should have just said, hey, you never existed in the prime timeline. But because I've been messing around with time and failing time and time again, this is why you now exist in everything. Why couldn't they do that? And the same thing with Michael Burnham. Why couldn't they just do that in that second season of the Red Angel thing? Like, why couldn't they just say, hey, you never existed and you was never like Spock's adopted sister, but because of a little time travel like foolery and everything, here you are. That's all you have to do. Then fans can be like, oh, that makes sense now. This is why, she's never been mentioned and everything. But no, just like that dude from Voyager who was in Picard season 2, they can't do that. Now, even though this episode does break canon and everything, there are some things in canon they kept intact, and thank God they did because fans would be fuming. I'll get into that a little bit later. So, this episode, It starts off with La'an doing her duties and training and this and that, and talking about how she's made friends but doesn't like hearing their problems because they just bicker and this and that. And we see her confiscate, a lot of Palia's like paintings and antiques and stuff like that. FYI, I hate the character of Palia. Not the actress, just the character. The character is the chief engineer aboard that of the Enterprise, but yet she never does anything engineering like. We never see her create nothing. We never see her disable nothing. Basically, stuff that a real engineer does in old Trek, it never happens in new Trek. Especially with that lady from Discovery, she'll never do nothing engineering like except for one time. One stinking time. Stamets does engineering stuff, but he's the science officer. That don't count. And so as she's like, going to her quarters and everything, she hears a noise and a man in a gray suit is bleeding. She can tell that like he's been shot by a gun and not that of a phaser. How exactly, I don't know, because she's in the 23rd century. Guns are extinct. So either she has really, really, really studied up on ancient like Earth stuff, or it's just plot armor. Which, yes, that's another thing that frustrates me with this episode. There is ton of plot armor going on here. Anyway, so he gives her a device and tells her to go to the bridge and stop this assassin, this and that, and then he dies. It turns out that he is from the Department of Temporal Investigations. And as soon as I heard that, I'm like, oh, I remember them from Deep Space Nine with the whole Bell Riot episode. That was a good episode. And I'm just kind of like, well, wait a minute. He time traveled. They can't time travel. And his device, I'm like, oh, snap. So his device he pulled out, which is new for this show, the holographic screen on there, man, it's from the 29th century, from that Voyager episode, Relativity. I'm all like, so he must be from the 29th century or so, because that's when Starfleet delved into time travel and stuff. So I'm like, dude, that's awesome, but he didn't give her no weapons, no nothing like that, like in 7 and 9, but he just gave her some kind of device. But we don't know what this device can do. Then everything distorts, and she goes to the bridge, and all of a sudden, instead of Pike, it's Kirk, James T. Kirk. And this it's not the Federation, it's like the Defense Earth something or another. So time has like altered, but how exactly and what caused it? So of course, he questions her and stuff like that. And Paul Wesley plays New Kirk. Now, I don't have no problem with his acting. My problem with this Kirk is he doesn't act like Kirk, and he doesn't look like Kirk, and he shouldn't even be in the show. This is 15 years before he becomes captain of the Enterprise. Now, they did a very smart thing in season 1 finale where Kirk shows up in an alternate like reality. And once again, he's in another alternate reality. So they're doing that crap again. Once was enough, and we don't need a second time. But by the 3rd season of Strange New Worlds, he shows up a lot. And I mean a lot. And I'm just kind of like, yo, this ain't his show. And then they bring in Scotty. Now they're bringing in what's his name? Sulu and McCoy. And I'm just like, yo, this is not the original series. I see what you're doing. I know y'all want that spinoff and everything, but this is their show and y'all don't belong here. I mean, even Uhura is in this show. And Spock and everything. And Spock makes sense, but Uhura does not. So it's just kind of like if they want to redo the original series, then just redo the original series. And so as he's questioning her, and she tells him, she's from an alternate reality and this and that, she shows him the device. He wants it. They struggle with it, and then they travel back in time. When he tries to use it again, it will not work. And she said it's because she has not completed that mission. And but how would the device know that? You know what I'm saying? Anyways, so this is when we get a lot of these time travel like shenanigan tropes and stuff like that. They have to go and change their clothes to blend in, but they don't have money. So she causes a person to pickpocket, if you will. So the alarm will go off and they can just walk on out. Then, they get like food and this and that, but, they realize they just can't keep stealing stuff. So this is when Kirk uses that good old Kirk charm and everything. And I will say, yes, Paul Wesley is very charming as Kirk. It's just a different type of charm than that of William Shatner. And so he plays chess and, wins a lot of money. Now they determine they are in Canada. This is shocking because normally in time travel Star Trek episodes, they're in America. But it films in Canada, so they decided, hey, let's just call it Canada. And I don't know why it's so muted when they time travel. The color palette is completely muted. I get it to show there's a different time, but people know that by looking at stuff. Oh, but wait, no, because in New Trek, a lot of stuff looks so modern, so they had to like distinguish it somehow. And so, like, after getting some money in this, they get like a hot dog. Now, how exactly does he know what a hot dog is confusing because they're so far in the future and you wouldn't think food like that exists. Not only that, but both of them seem to be very familiar with a lot of stuff from back in the day. And it's like how? And I get it. Like even today, a lot of people know about ancient Greece and this and that. But some of the stuff they know that's not like famous history stuff. It's just kind of weird how they would know that stuff. But anyways, they start to talk and bond, and he talks about how he was born in space on the USS Iowa and everything, different from that of the Kelvin. So once again, no, this isn't the Kelvin timeline that has been. Man, that whole JJ Kelvin crap is so confusing. First, it was an alternate timeline, then it became alternate timeline, alternate reality, and everything. Set in a completely different dimension because Discovery says in a different dimension. This crap is so confusing, I swear. And so you can start to see she is starting to like him, a lot of his mannerism, how he acts, and this and that. And she starts to feel a little unsettled when she's sleeping because I guess she wants him by her side and everything. But anyways, as they're out and about, they see that of a bridge explosion, which both of them seem to think that, they remember that from history class. So this couldn't be the person going back in time and doing that. So what could it be? Well, they meet a woman. A random woman taking pictures and stuff like that. And they want to see her camera. And so she is played by Adeline Kane. And I'm a huge fan of Adeline Kane. She started off in Power Rangers. Then she was in Brain on the CW, had her own show, Grey's Anatomy. So, she did good for a former Power Ranger star. And so, like, something, I forget what, leads them to talk about cold fusion and they need an engineer. And she realizes something. Pelia is on Earth during this time because she's a Lanite and they're basically immortal, kind of. And so, or they have longevity. And so she goes to her antique store, start telling her, like, their problem and how they need this, this, and that. And turns out this version of Pelia isn't an engineer yet, or at least never becomes one because of all the time travel shenanigans. So this was completely pointless and everything. But Leon is able to jerry rig like a watch to detect for like something. Then all of a sudden that camera lady finds them again. And she starts talking about conspiracies, how she believes in aliens, and she shows them a picture of a Romulan vessel. And Kirk knows exactly what that is, but La'an doesn't. Now, this is important because this keeps canon. Because Kirk, in the original timeline, the Enterprise meets the Romulans for the first time. And so, in this alternate version, he has met them already, but Leon has not because Kirk has not become captain to meet that of the Romulans. But the Romulans showed up in Enterprise, but, they never saw their face. So this was very, very smart. And it kept canon. And so at some point, like, they chased down, like, this van that had debris from, like, the Romulan ship or something like that. And it leads them to that, some type of institute, for I can't say Nguyen Singh. And so like she realizes, oh wait, that's my last name, and so this must be why I have to like travel through time and everything. And so when they go there, she realizes that her handprint will open the door because it's through genetics and genetics only. And so then all of a sudden, here comes that camera lady again, Sarah. She holds them at gunpoint. Turns out she's a Romulan who traveled back in time. And she has been trapped for 30 years in the past. Another nod to that, the Voyager episode when they first time traveled and met Braxton. Because he was trapped on Earth for a couple of decades. And so she got trapped because she's been trying to prevent something. Because she saw this simulation and she's all like, oh, I must time travel back in time to prevent this from happening. Not knowing if it will actually happen or not. And so at some point she kills Kirk. And all her time travel shenanigans, she's been trying to prevent Khan from being born. Because of this, it changed that of the Eugenics Wars from the 90s now to the early 2000s or mid 2000s or so. Just say 21st century. And so it's kind of like, wait, so canon is now broken because of this? And it's like, come on, man. Like, I get it. Kurtzman wants to do his own thing and not really rely on that of canon because fans will get pissed. But there had to have been a different way to do that than, like, having her break canon. All this man had to do was say Discovery is in an alternate reality. And everything that follows. Picard, alternate reality. Strange New Worlds, alternate reality. Lower Decks, alternate reality. That's all the man had to do. But no. In Discovery Season 3, he said, oh, this show is canon to that of the timeline. And Strange New Worlds Season 1, this show is canon to the prime timeline. But it's not. There's so much stuff that is different. Curse, man. Anyway, so Sarah gives her a really interesting proposition. She's like, look, man, Khan has to die. He is too freaking evil and everything. And some other stuff. And see, she's trying to prevent, like, also, like, the Federation from forming and humanity from advancing and stuff. But, she tells him straight up, like, look, you hate this man, and all this other stuff. Like, just let me off him and everything. And you can keep that device and you can stay, in this alternate timeline, keeping all your memories and stuff. And therefore, you will still exist and everything, which now explains how she was able to survive in the beginning of the episode, because she should have disappeared once time got altered, but she didn't because of that device. But she ends up killing that Asira. Then she goes and meets Khan, a teeny tiny little boy. And she can't believe just how young he is and innocent looking. So they do that whole crap of, I can't believe you turn into a monster when you grow up, but you're so innocent and sweet now, I have to let you live. I'm just kind of like, dude, you hate this man. This man took over Earth. He's so evil. This is literally the Hitler thing. If you could go back in time and kill Hitler, would you? You know what I'm saying? But she lets him live and she travels back to that of the present. Now, here's the interesting thing about Khan. This man's race and bloodline has changed so freaking much that it is confusing. Now, Khan in the original series, canon-wise, is supposed to be that of an Indian man from South Asia, Punjabi and everything. But he's played by a Mexican actor. Then, for Star Trek Into Darkness, the universe where it was prime timeline, time got changed, and when it got changed, it created an alternate reality. Which is weird because they changed, whatever. I'm so tired of J.J. Abrams. But anyway, they made him into a white British man. That don't make no sense. Because why? Because of the simple fact, when in the 2009 movie of Star Trek, when they went back and changed time, they didn't go so far back that altered Khan. They only went back as far as to when both Kirk and Spock were born and everything. And Khan has been around centuries before they was born. So everything that happened in, say, Star Trek Enterprise and everything that happened on Earth during the New Genesis Wars should not have been affected. So why is he a white British man? Then we get on over to Strange New Worlds. And young Khan is now played by a Indian Latino. And so like, okay, they got the Indian part right. But here is the confusing part. La'an, she's Asian, Chinese. When did his bloodline go from being Indian to Chinese? That's Kurtzman's logic for you. So she's back in the future of her present day and everything is fine. She heads back to her quarters and there's a woman waiting for her from the Department of Temporal Investigations. And so the question is, she's wearing the same color uniform as that man, so she must be from the 29th century. And she thanks La'an and all this and that. But La'an is pissed, talking about, oh, you sent me back in time, blah, blah, blah. She's like, yo, I didn't send you nowhere. And telling her that, like, look, those memories you had, you're going to keep and everything, but you can't discuss this with nobody. Not your captain, not Kirk, none of that crap. And she's all like, I experienced all this blah, 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 blah stuff, and I can't talk it with nobody, even Kirk. And she's like, nah, you can't do that. That's against the rules and everything. And then she teleports on out of there. And so La'an, so she contacts Lieutenant James T. Kirk using a pad. When can they do that? She's not even on the computer screen. Lord, the technology in this show don't make no sense. But anyway, and she's just kind of chit-chatting with him, trying to, strike up a conversation, hoping that maybe he'll end up liking her and kissing her like the other version. But he's just kind of weirded out kind of about why she's contacting him, and she starts bringing up his brother, and so they hang up and she just starts bawling in tears. And it's really sad to see because she really liked him. However, I feel like her liking him was very, very, very rushed and just kind of out of place because of the simple fact. In the first season, she never displayed any type of emotional feelings towards anybody except for number one as like a friend. But other than that, like, her and Kirk, like, what like do they have in common? What are their interests? Why does she like him exactly? She likes him because of the stuff he displayed in this episode, but it's so far removed from who she is. You know what I'm saying? Now, I would have preferred, instead of Kirk, who had no business being in this episode, if it was number one who she time traveled with. They're friends, and they got into that huge argument because La'an does not like augmented people. She doesn't like people whose genetics have been manipulated or altered or whatever because of the whole Khan situation. And so this could have been a great episode for them to hash out some more feelings and this and that. But nah, they wanted to have Kirk for nostalgia bait and everything. And so yeah, this episode, it should have been fun, man. But it wasn't. It's mainly because they spent the entire time having that of Kirk and La'an bond, just to rip her heart out and everything. And I get that, but at the same time, it's like it should have trekked more. You know what I'm saying? It should have been more scientific stuff. That twist at the end just kind of came out of nowhere. And swap Kirk for number one, and in my opinion, that would have worked, and explain why La'an never existed in the Prime universe. Happy Asian and Pacific Islander month, everybody. Alrighty, well, I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.